I'm George Chias. We're going to talk about command and control frameworks. I have led the offensive security team at a large financial for the past 10 years, and I've actually just resigned. So I will be looking and doing something new and exciting. I will be announcing that June 1st, but over the last 10 years, I started a team doing infrastructure vulnerability assessment, then introduced penetration testing. Imagine exploiting production systems at a financial that moved between $2 to $3 trillion a day globally. So it was a lot of fun figuring that out. Then created the red team, worked in a number of the special interest groups with FSI, SAC, and FIRST, and try to contribute back to the community throughout there. The last big innovative thing a couple years ago was the introduction of the purple team. So we'll talk a little bit about that here. What I've been able to share with the community during those 10 years, because I joke around saying that it's like Fight Club, and the first rule of Fight Club is you can't talk about Fight Club. So everything, obviously red tape and a financial. I was allowed to do some things on the side. A couple of things you might be aware of is a common vulnerability scoring system. We just released version 3.1. I will be losing my voting membership there, so will be missed. They already started working on CVSS version 4, so look forward to what they're doing. I also work with the Global Financial Markets Association through this financial, and we created a framework for the regulatory use of threat-led pen testing and red teaming in financial industries. Throughout that, I've been a SANS certified instructor. I've been teaching for SANS for too many years, about 9 to 10 years now, and I've recently did a 2-day red team course for SANS, which is awesome. Even if you're not technical and you're bringing in a program or a red team program, it's a fun 2 days. Now live online, we'll be giving it in the next couple months 3 times, so very excited. Also got into the National Security Institute at George Mason University to learn to speak to lawmakers about what we need to do to improve information security for everyone. I'm also an ISSA fellow and a big follower and love ISSA. Been on the board of the South Florida chapter. It's actually how I got my job at the financial, was through networking. And then in my past life, I was a system administrator and wrote a book on Windows 7 Administrator's Reference that none of you should be buying today because Windows 7's end of life. Right? Everyone knows that. None of you have Windows 7. I am on Twitter and LinkedIn. Come connect with me. I have 2 months to give back to the community and share as much as I possibly can. So let me know what you want to hear, and we will get to it. So today, command and control, fun stuff. Command and control is MITRE ATT&CK Tactic 11. And it's one of the main tactics that a malicious actor has when they are attacking you. And if you're doing adversary emulation for a red team or a purple team type of exercise, then you kind of need command and control as well. See, command and control is the communication channel that a malicious actor or a red team or purple team has into a machine that they have compromised. See, without command and control, you'd have to create a worm, and worms kind of have minds of their own and can get out of hand, right? Because you have no way to control them. So command and control is very important. You get into a system, you compromise it, you want it to call back to you so that you can then give it instructions on what to do next. And it really facilitates everything else. It facilitates lateral movement and really action on objectives. So command and control frameworks came about because red teams were asked to emulate what malicious actors were doing. Malicious actors were using what's called RATs, or remote access Trojans, and a bunch of red teamers and very awesome people in the community started creating these tools for us to do pen testing and red teaming. And Empire was awesome. Empire was a command and control framework that was probably the most popular and most used. Sure, we've heard of Metasploit, and every pen tester has used Metasploit, but Metasploit wasn't really a command and control framework. Metasploit was more an exploitation framework to get into the system. Then once you had access, what would you do? Well, Meterpreter is super loud. Meterpreter is the payload that comes with Metasploit, and it has a continuous connection to the machine that you compromised. And continuous connections kind of stick out when you are testing systems. So that wasn't a good idea. And then Empire came out. Empire was an empire, build up an empire of all this PowerShell stuff. So it was a Python 2 server, and yes, Python 2 is end of life. And you can create agents or payloads in Windows, Linux, and Mac. Python server and then agents. And the reason that stood out was the Windows agent was a PowerShell agent, and PowerShell is living off the land at its core, right? Every Windows system has PowerShell. If you are running Windows right now, even if you're running Windows 7, which is end of life and you shouldn't be running, you have PowerShell. So that was awesome because you're just using built-in commands to do all this post-exploitation stuff. You didn't have to drop anything on disk. When you drop things on disk, you get caught by antivirus, anti-malware. So it was pretty cool. And then as far as an operator, you set up a listener, which was your server, and then it would automatically configure the agent or the stager that you were creating to connect back to your listener, which was nice. If you've used Metasploit, right, and remember you have to set up both the handler and the payload and make sure that you don't mess up the ports or the IPs and all that. This didn't occur in Empire. And did command and control via HTTP and HTTPS, and it was proxy aware. So if your enterprise environment has a proxy outbound, that's the only way outbound, which it should, then Empire knew that would look at that and use that proxy to go out. It also used what's called beacons. So you can tell Empire to call out to your listener every minute or every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes. That way it actually looks like an HTTP connection, right? When you open up a web browser, you do a GET request to google.com, you get that back, then you wait and you read stuff, and then you open a million tabs and you leave all those open for God knows how long, and that's it. Every time you click on something, it's a GET request that comes back, and then that's it. There's no traffic going between that. So those are called beacons. Even if you were using HTTPS, it was cryptographically secure. So you picked a pre-shared key that way, and no one can connect to your listener unless it was your agent. And that way the traffic going back and forth was encrypted as well. So if you dumped hashes or you stole credentials or you're sending things, files or sensitive information, it'd be encrypted. And it was modular. So it actually took PowerSploit, PowerBreach, PowerUp, PowerView, all these PowerShell tools and brought them all together. And you can load any other PowerShell script. It's awesome. And best of all, especially if you write classes that have to do with exploitation or red teaming, you need something that's reliable and consistent and doesn't have many bugs. And this was it. Latest version was 2.5. So big thank you to all the developers there. You all did an awesome job and we loved Empire. But then July 31st, 2019 happened. And that's when they posted on Twitter that the project's time has passed and newer frameworks with better capabilities have been released. So it's time to say farewell to Empire. Moment of silence for them. So right around this time, I was also releasing my 2-day class. I was going out into beta mode. And of course I had chosen Empire because it was the most popular, used PowerShell, is reliable, etc. And I said, oh my gosh, what do I do? And I started asking around, in the SANS pen test Slack, fellow authors and pen testers and red teamers that do consulting work, since I work at a financial and I only hack into myself. What are you all using? And I got all these answers, like not a single one solid answer of this is the replacement of Empire. So I will note right now that Empire is now supported. It has been taken to Python 3. And it is the folks at BC Security that are maintaining it. So shout out to them because version 3 is now out and they have a web GUI called Starkiller. Very cool stuff. So you can actually have multiple people using Empire. There's a link here, Empire and Starkiller webinar for this Saturday. So I'm actually not going to demo Empire 3 or Starkiller in this demo because you can all join that on Saturday and watch them demo their own tool. So shout out to them. So this started the whole mission. What do? Well, we need to choose the best modern replacement for Empire, at least for my class. That was my immediate mission, and find one that's reliable, consistent, user-friendly, and that met, typical requirements of red team tools and requirements that any red team would have, really, not just for a class. So came up with some of these requirements. If you're going to use this for red team operations, you need it to be operationally secure. You don't want it going wild. You don't want it leaving things behind or popping things up or sending things clear text. And you want multiple command and control channels, right? Most organizations use HTTP, and most malware uses HTTP as well. So you kind of want HTTP as a channel, but you also might want to test other channels, like, can we do command and control through your DNS? Do you know? We should test it. What about DNS over HTTPS? HTTP2, HTTP3, right? There's a whole bunch of channels. It should also allow for multiple agents, because I don't know about your organization, but we didn't just have Windows boxes. Sure, we had like 400,000 Windows boxes, but we also had a whole bunch of Linux systems, Solaris, AIX, mainframes, you name it, we had it, right? So we kind of need agents that run on all of these, right? And of course, yes, Mac, right? So don't start trolling me on how cool Mac are. Yes, there are payloads for Mac, believe it or not. I know, I heard it was unhackable at some point in my life. But yeah, you can have agents and payloads for that as well. And then you want to be able to customize it, right? Because all of these vanilla payloads should get caught, right? They get caught in your environment. I hope so. If you don't know that answer, then after this webinar, you're going to go get permission. You're going to try some of this stuff out in your environment. Make sure at least the vanilla stuff gets caught. Like if I'm pulling something from GitHub and touching disk and it's not getting caught by your controls, you should look into that. And hopefully most of your organizations do use proxies and use domain categorization, right? Like they block, the easiest one is porn, right? Like all your corporate environments block porn. They probably block other things, right? Like some organizations block guns or hacking tools, things like that. Those are called categories, and domains are categorized. So most organizations block that. You should be able to get around that by getting a domain or using a technique called domain fronting, where we use how content delivery networks work. That was a pretty cool feature of Empire, so requirement for me on looking into this. Proxy aware I mentioned. Then internal pivoting, right? How many of you gain access to a system and that system has the objective that you were after? Very rare, right? I actually did one red team engagement with a friend, Dave Mayer. He's now at InGuardians with actually another person, Carlos Venturamini. These guys are awesome on InGuardians, are awesome as a whole. Before they were there, we were doing an engagement, and they were able to spend so much time on recon and social engineering that when they obtained initial access, they actually got onto the system that they needed to steal stuff on. They were actually stealing research and development for trading certain things that are way beyond my comprehension. But point is that it happened once in all of my experience during red teaming. It rarely happens. You actually have to pivot. So internal pivoting is important. And then multi-user. See, red team, purple team, they all have the word team in it. It's actually half the word, right? And that means more than one person. So you want a command and control framework that allows multiple people to get on. And woohoo, Sina got out early. Awesome. You got to join the webinar. You can post questions as we go. And like I said, I only have a couple more slides, actually one more slide. So started looking around and figuring out what frameworks there are. And this was originally released November 2019 at SANS Hackfest. There were 30 frameworks. Today, there are 42 on there. So big shout out to all the developers, all the contributors, everyone that tags me when a new C2 comes out. This is a full community free resource. So we are looking for contributors, and hopefully I'm really lowering that barrier of entry so that you can look at one of these C2s and play with them and show me what you learned, and then we can show the world. So with that, demo time, pray to demo gods. Let's go. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is change the screen. Right now, what do you see? Oh, you see, this is what motivates me in life, to get a Lambo, a yacht, and a helicopter at some point in my life. I just think it'd be super cool. And yes, I know I can just rent them. All right, let's start sharing Google Chrome. So that's gonna show up. All right, cool. And thanks for everyone that's dropping questions and interacting with me. I appreciate that. Yes, I love the yacht as well. All right, so this is the C2 matrix. Yes, it's a website, it's a GUI. You go to the c2matrix.com and this is what you see. I'm gonna go ahead and send all this info one more time. So if you've already seen it, sorry, there's other people asking, so you can play along as well. So this is a website, and up here on the top right, you can see about the C2 matrix. You can read that it's the golden age of command and control frameworks. I did not coin that term. That was coined by Matt Toussaint, awesome person, YouTube channel. Check him out, also SANS instructor. The goal of this site is to point you to the best command and control framework for your needs based on the adversary emulation plan and the target environment you're testing. Take a look at the matrix or use the questionnaire to determine which fits. So over on the right in big red, you have the matrix button. You press that and it's going to take you to the golden source. This is the golden source because yes, it's an Excel spreadsheet. Sorry, I've been 10 years out of financial. This is all I know how to do, Excel and PowerPoint. This is what happens when you become a manager. So over on the left side, you have all the command and control frameworks. If I highlight those, you can see that there are 42 currently. Then we pick one and we're going to go across the top at the various different things about each one. We start with the evaluator. This is the person that actually used the C2 and is filling this out. So you can see I did a lot of them. Shout outs to Medine, to Cabbage Salad, to Dave Eitel, Adam, Buster B, Lee, Dave Mayer, Adam, Matt Toussaint, Tim Malcolm Vetter, Kevin Lustig, etc. Thank you all for contributions. And you can also contribute to this, and we can put your handle here. We have the date that this was tested, and that is because certain versions come out, right? So you also have the license of each of these. You can see most of these are open source. They have certain licenses, while some are commercial. Yes, we have Cobalt Strike in there. We have Innuendo. We have the Red Team Toolkit. We have Scythe. We have Voodoo, right? A few commercial ones. Of course, the commercial ones are going to offer you some things that the free ones don't. You have the price based on what we were able to get, and then the version that was reviewed. Then how I implemented it, right? Some of these can be implemented through Docker, some could be through Python, Go, some are binaries, some are install.sh. This is how we implemented it when we tested it, which means that it works that way. So if you're going to go and install this, then this is probably a safer bet to do it. And yes, a lot of these are maintained, so the code changes quite a bit. Then Kali. Everyone has heard of Kali. So Kali doesn't really have any of these command and control frameworks, does it? So I've been working with the folks over at Offensive Security, and the next version, 2020.2, will have some of these in Kali. So if you love Kali, it's coming to you. If you don't like Kali and you want to get these without going through the work of installing it, then today we are releasing SANS Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition that has 8 of the top and just personal favorite C2 frameworks that you can download. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll get there shortly. Next up, we have the language. So this is the language that the server runs off. Again, you have to run your server on one system, and then you create agents that execute in the target environment. And they are coded in various different languages. So you see here, for example, AppFile is done in Python and the agents are Python. You have some that are .NET, like Faction. You have some that are in Go. You have a lot of Python. Hackers like Python, right? Etc. And then the agents, a lot of agents in Python, some in PowerShell, like Empire, others in .NET, some in C++, some in C, C#, Go, etc. We try to fill that out there. Then we have the UI, or the user interface. Does this one allow multiple users to connect to it? Yes or no? You can see Empire there has a yes now with a different tool called Starkiller. So we have links in there as well. Some of them don't allow it, some of them do. And then the UI, some are web-based, others are CLI, others have a nice little GUI, really depends. And API, some of these have APIs that allow further functionality. Remember, these are C2 frameworks, or they, at least it started with only C2 frameworks. Some are just kind of proof of concepts, and you can see that, for example, right here, you see a proof of concept one is selected. And then we go on to the channel. So I'm going to scroll over. Channels are in blue. So these are the channels that you use for communication. Some are HTTP, some a lot, pretty much all of them use allow HTTP. Some have HTTP2. What is HTTP2? Do you allow HTTP2? Are you using the latest browser? Are you allowing a protocol outbound from your network without knowing if you do or don't? So Merlin is one that does that, and that's actually one that I'm going to demo just because I like being different. And I want you to test something in your environment that you probably didn't know you had enabled. How about HTTP3? Do you have that enabled in your environment? Do you have visibility in the communication going out? DNS, this is old school, it's slow. DNS is good for what we call long haul, and I guess now is a good time in any to talk about short haul and long haul C2. See, when you're interacting with the target host, you don't want to be waiting like an entire day between commands and results. Like if I run who am I don't want to wait a day to get a response on what user I'm running on that target system, right? So you create short hauls that are, you know, every minute, every 10-minute beacons. But those also risk getting caught because you're running things on them. So you want to have long hauls. Long hauls are things that only check in maybe once a day, once every 5 days, that really fly under the radar and are just kind of like your backup C2 into the target environment in the event that your short haul gets caught. So DNS is a good channel for that. And then there's DOH. What's DOH? DNS over HTTPS. Are you running the latest web browsers? You probably have this enabled as well. Or do you have an visibility? Only you know that answer, and only you can test it and see. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of other channels. Innuendo, obviously, being the main one here that does a lot of this. Innuendo is a enterprise post exploit solution. It's pretty stealthy, pretty cool, created by the folks at Immunity, which is a South Florida company, exactly where I live as well. So shout out to all of them. Dave Vitale, if you're listening, love you, man. Then we have agents. This is the agents that you create and run on the environment that you're targeting. So are you targeting a Windows environment, a Linux environment, or a Mac? Well, here we tell you which ones work on which operating system. So Caldera, for instance, allows you to create agents in all of these. So does Empire. And then you see some that, for example, Mac Shell Swift only allows you to create Mac OS payload. So that's evaluated there. And then we have capabilities, and there's a lot of capabilities. One of them is to use steganography. Steganography is hiding things in images. So we don't really have many there. There is one called DALL-E. Anyone watch Money Heist on Netflix? Yes, I know. That's two Netflix references in one talk. What is happening in the world right now? You're talking so much about Netflix. It's Pretty cool one. Uses Stego to hide traffic back and forth. Pretty cool stuff. Generally something you will not detect. Proxy aware. So does this command and control payload, when it runs, know that you're using a proxy and uses that proxy outbound? Probably required for some of your enterprise environments. Domain fronting, I mentioned. Does it have the ability of using CDN networks to redirect through before it gets to your command control server? Can you do custom profiles? Custom profiles are in, for example, in an HTTP header, the user agent or information about the particular agent that's going. These are things you want to customize, because if you're using the vanilla agents and the vanilla configuration, you're probably going to get caught if you're testing from a red team perspective. Jitter. Jitter is something that we add to our beacon. So for example, if I have a beacon that calls out every 10 seconds, blue teams are getting really good to see that pattern, right? Some system calling out to the same host every 10 seconds, every day. Kind of easy to get caught, right? There's pattern matching there. So what do? You introduce jitter. Jitter is introduced as a percentage. So for example, if I give it a 50% jitter to a 10-second beacon, it will go pseudo-randomly between that amount of time. So sometimes it'll beacon out in 5 seconds, sometimes it'll beacon out in 15 seconds, and anywhere in that range, right? 50% of 10, I think I did math correctly in my head. So sometimes it'll be 7 seconds, sometimes it'll be 9, sometimes it'll be 13, then 5, then 10, right? That's jitter. And then working hours. Working hours is actually pretty cool, and only Empire has this. Because I think most people can just program this when they're done with their short haul C2. They can put it to sleep for the next 10 hours or so. And working hours is only call back during these hours. See, if you're using an HTTP payload and it's calling out through HTTP, then what times does that normally happen in your place of business? Well, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the environment, because that's when people are logged into a machine and using HTTP. Doing this at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning will probably stick out. So that's working hours. Kill date. This is operational security for when your beacon should die and not call back home. This means it should, if your C2 server gets caught and blocked, then it should clean up after itself and not keep trying to call back to your C2 for eternity, because you set the kill date to die. Generally, we set this at the end of the engagement. Chaining is lateral movement. Can you chain between various different systems internally? You can see a lot of them do not allow this. That's kind of an important thing if you're doing red team exercises. There's other ways you can chain through and pivot with built-in operating system commands. So there's ways around this. Don't just discard the C2 because you need this and it doesn't do it. And then logging. Logging is super important. We want everything logged. There's a shout out to friends in the Netherlands that have a tool called Red Elk. It actually gets, I believe it has support for Cobalt Strike and Covenant to send the logs to an elk stack, and then you can monitor your logs there. You want to log everything you do. If you're a red teamer, you have to know everything your red team is doing, what your other team members are doing, etc. And then MITRE ATT&CK mapping. So some of these have it, and you can see there, we have a link to MITRE's attack for Cobalt Strike, which shows all the tactics and techniques that a particular tool can do. So not that many have that. And a dashboard, this is generally part of GUI. Is it actively maintained? And at last, we have our support stuff. So some of these have Slack channels. I put Slack members just to kind of try to gauge popularity based on facts and numbers, right? Not just on what I heard on the street. So that's why Slack members is there. Some of these folks are on Twitter. Shout out to all these people that are developers and have done, given back to the community, appreciate it. They have a website, their GitHub page, their GitHub issues, open and closed. This was another way or metric for me to have facts around which is the most popular and which isn't. How-to documents for running it, and then just my random notes. So that is the C2 matrix. If we go back to the site, there's a GUI. If that looking at Excel hurts your eyes, trust me, I know what it feels like. Then you can look at this beautiful chart. Now, the only thing about this is that it's not updated as quickly as Excel, because we can update Excel way faster and we can update other things. You also have feedback. If you had feedback, a bug report, feature request, tool request, questions, website feedback, or other, go ahead and fill that out. And then we have the how-to, which is how-to.thec2matrix.com. So we're going to start getting into some demos now. All right, so how-to.thec2matrix, this is a Git book, and it started just with kind of a dump of all my notes, and figured I should give it back to the community. So you start here, how-to.thec2matrix, has the main site, which I just showed you, has the golden source. It has the questionnaire. The questionnaire, I'll go through it real quick, lets you answer questions based on what needs you have. Again, I created this for red teaming before I realized that blue teams can use this as well, and purple teams. So if you are a red team and you want to test something out, you can go in here and say, what do you need C2s that support multiple users? And you can select yes to either of them, or no, and go on to the next question. Or you want to test like DOH, then it tells you exactly which one allows it. Or if you want DNS, or you want HTTP, and it filters out as you go. I figured that this was nice to do just as a feature when we originally released this. So it's there. You can also just filter things in Excel. Hopefully you know how to do that. So that's the questionnaire. And then if you're new to command and control frameworks, then we recommend you start with the Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition. So let's click that, because that is released today for free for all of you to download. And what is this? Well, this is in collaboration with SANS. As I mentioned, I teach for SANS. Ryan O'Grady, can't thank you enough, sir. Thank you very much. He helped create the original Slingshot for my Security 564 two-day class. He also maintains the community edition of Slingshot, and he helped create the C2 Matrix edition of Slingshot. So that's 3 different VMs that he helped with, all free to the community. So thank you so much, Ryan. Not sure if you're listening, but it's recorded. Love you, man. So the goal here is to lower the learning curve of installing each C2 framework. So that's something that has been tough for us, especially if you want multiple C2s to run on the same system, because they do step on each other's toes. Right? They all like to bind to port 80 or 8080 or 443, and some of them have PostgreSQL databases, and some of them use Docker, right? So it's not ideal, right? So what we did is give everyone a free virtual machine that has these 8 different C2s. Why did we choose these C2s? Just because they're my favorite. I don't know. Sorry. These are the ones we like. So Covenant, Empire, 3-With, Starkiller, Faction, Coatic, Merlin, Metasploit, Silent Trinity, and Sliver. It also has an awesome tool called Vector. Vector I use for tracking red team and purple team engagement. It is such an awesome tool. They just came out with version 5.5. Shout out to the folks at Security Risk Advisors. So how do you get started? Very simple. You download the VMware OVA file here. So you click there, you log into your SANS portal account, which I know all of you have logged in because you're on this webinar. And then there's 2. This is the one you're going to get, Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition. You click that and it will go download it. Then you import it. You do need VMware Workstation. You double click it. It will import it for you. It will take a little bit. It is a large image because we brought all of the dependencies of all those C2s into the image, and Vector as well. So sorry about that. So you log in with Slingshot, and then you change your password. You change your password with password D, give it the Slingshot password, and create another password. You're also natted. This is for your own safety. That way you're not out on the bridge network with a VM that has a default password. There's a video here of getting started for a walkthrough of what I just mentioned. There's also a fax. on various things. Now, we did rush this because we were doing a talk for Wild West Hackfest, and as we install various different things, we forgot to turn other things off. So Apache 2 and PostgreSQL start when you start your machine, which means if you want to bind to port 80 or 443, you can't because Apache's already bound to it. So you need to stop that. If you want to run something, one of the C2s that use PostgreSQL, you might have to stop that. So this is a little facts of what to do to turn those off in the event that you have any trouble. Now, I've walked through all that. There's video of that, etc. And please let me know if you have any questions. Now, the eval environment. This is the environment that I figured would be the simplest to do all this testing as well as be consistent, because there are other contributors. And I want to make sure that Tim Medine is testing something in the same way that I'm testing something. That way we get the same results, right? So the simplest way and also long-term vision was to put a pfSense virtual machine. pfSense is free, you can download it and install it and put various different interfaces. pfSense also has a lot of features. For instance, in the future, once we start talking about detection and creating rules for various things, pfSense already has snort and suricata, right? And you can add various different things like NetFlow and whatnot that will allow you to have that visibility. So we created two LAN segments within the pfSense. One is the attackers. We gave them a 10.0.0.1. The IP doesn't really matter. And then we gave another segment for the victims, 192.168.1.1. And then I also have a third interface that I just have natted with my machine, and that is for everyone, all these machines, to be able to connect to the internet, right? Because we're going to be downloading stuff from GitHub and whatnot. So that's there. That's separated through LAN segments, which I'll show you shortly. I also just published this video. Please let me know if you like the videos. My brother's been teaching me a whole lot of editing. If no one likes the videos and they're not bringing any value, I won't spend the hour it takes me to edit a video for you. And then setting up the Windows victim. This is the latest item I did today. I'm going to walk you through this, but I also posted a video for that. Pretty much on Windows, we have Wireshark running to see the network traffic, and we have Sysmon running to see the endpoint detection. So if you've never used any of those, right here it tells you how to download Wireshark, then listen on that adapter, and then set up a filter so you're only seeing the traffic to and from that attacker IP. Same with Sysmon. Download it from Microsoft, extract it, and then we're using the Swift on Security Sysmon config because that's probably the most famous one or commonly used, and how to use it. Then we show you how to open up Event Viewer and navigate through, etc. So with that running, we will now go over to VMware. Okay, so what do we got? We have pfSense. pfSense is running with a WAN interface, as I mentioned, a workstation LAN or the victim LAN, and an attacker LAN. The way I did that in VMware is you go to VMware settings, and in here you have three network adapters on this pfSense. One is natted. This one is the one that allows you to go out to the internet through your host internet connection. Then I have a victim LAN segment here. You can click on LAN segments if you want to add or remove different segments. And then you have the attacker segment. Then for each of these virtual machines, you have them in their respective LAN segment. So this one's IP is 192.168.1.105. I can confirm that that is the LAN segment for our victims. And then over on Slingshot, I'm on a 10.0.0.1.5 IP, and I can confirm that that LAN segment is for attackers. So we have everything set up. Now let's go over first to our Windows system. This is a Windows 10, and I mentioned two things. One, we're going to run Wireshark. So we're going to start that up first. Double click on Wireshark, and then we're going to give it the IP address that I mentioned, which is 115, right? Let me look. Yes, 115. And that way, we only see traffic to and from there. We can test this by pinging 10.0.0.115 We'll let that ping 4 times, and there we see that it is indeed only showing me traffic to and from that attacker system. Then I started Sysmon. You're just gonna have to take my word for it that I started Sysmon. I open up Event Viewer, and we're clearing the log, and I think it's running. You know what? I'm not going to, I think if it's already running, it's not gonna be a problem. So I'll go over to CD Tools. I can see here that here I have Sysmon 64 and the Swift on Security Config. I hit enter. Yeah, it's already registered, so it was already running. So we're good there. So we have Sysmon, we have Wireshark, we have a poor victim over here, and then over on Slingshot, we're on 10.0.0.1.5. I'm going to do Sliver first, and Sliver creates the binary for you on the fly. So if we walk through here, I think you can see, I'm going to zoom in one more time in the event that you can. And if you're asking, how do I know what I need to do? Well, you go to the how-to.thec2matrix.com/c2/sliver, and then you follow the instructions. So to run Sliver, it tells you sudo/opt/sliver/sliver-server, and you get this message: all hackers gain undying, version 00.6. Welcome to Sliver Shell, type help for options. Always a good idea to use help. And then I'm going to generate a payload. In this case, I ran generate --HTTP because I wanted to use HTTP and run it over 10.0.0.1.15. This is my server. I already did this because this takes a while. See, it says here, generating a new Windows AMD 64 sliver binary. Symbol obfuscation is enabled. This process takes about 15 minutes. Actually took 7 on my VM, and it saved the binary over here. So I need to get this binary over to my victim. But before that, I'm gonna start an HTTP listener. You can see there, it started HTTP on port 80 listener and started the job. Now, this file here, and it does create random names. I didn't name it brief baggage. It does come up with some pretty silly names. So now I need to copy this over and somehow get it onto my Windows system. So to do that, I will clear all this out. And first, we'll do sudo move this file, and always use copy and paste, to /temp. Hit enter. We do ls, and there we see our file called briefbaggage.exe has been moved from the home directory to the temp. Then I'm going to run python-m simple HTTP server. I'm going to run that on port 8080. I can't run it on port 80 because Sliver's already listening on port 80. So I'm going to run this on port 8080, hit enter, and it's just a simple web server that's going to listen. So I go over to my victim machine. Again, this is post-exploitation, so I've already compromised this system. I go to 10.0.0.1.15, port 8080, and there I see brief baggage. I'm going to go ahead and click that and execute it if it downloads. There it goes, brief baggage, and pray to the demo gods. Oh no, you're running something from the internet. Run anyway. And it should have communicated, it should have ran, and we should see, oh, now we see some traffic. So we can scroll up. Oh my gosh, look at all that traffic's been sending. All right, so here, oh, you know why? Because I downloaded something from port 80, didn't I? That's why it's showing me all this traffic. So let's just wait for it to check in again. You can see the time here, time 278 is the last time, and we're gonna do it, we're gonna see that it does a check-in. There we go, 293, it did another check-in from there. So if we go over, actually we could take a look over here at Sysmon as well, right click refresh. There we go, Sysmon is showing us a bunch of stuff. What is going on? Well, look, you just ran brief baggage.exe. It uses TCP. It goes over HTTP on port 80. And you can go through and follow what sysmon is telling you about this particular file that you just executed. Then over here on Sliver, we see that we have a new session. Session number 1, brief baggage, came in from 192.168.1.105. That machine is Windows 10-01. Sweet. Let's interact. So again, go to the how-to if you don't know what commands to use, or type help like it suggests. And I do sessions. Now, of course, it doesn't look so pretty because I'm super zoomed in here so that you can read it. So I can see session 1 is there. So then I can do use 1. And now I can interact with my system, this Windows 10 system. Since I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm going to type help, and help is going to explain to me everything that I can do on this particular system. So here on Windows, I can elevate, get system, impersonate, migrate to something else. I can look at the file system. I can get the process ID I'm in. I can kill the remote process, right? Everything that you would do, right? You can start an interactive shell, you can do shell. This is my funnest one to run because remember, some of these systems are operationally secure. That means they tell you if something bad is happening. Well, something bad is about to happen. It said this action is bad OPSEC. It's bad operational security. Are you an adult? Which I'm not, but I'm just gonna hit yes just so I get a shell. And you can see it opened a shell, and now I am on, just like if I had a standard shell on a command.exe on 1.168.1.105. So let's exit out of that because of course I'm running out of time. Die. Okay, that died. I am going to kill that process the hard way. Where's that process? There it is. Obviously, if you see a process like this running from your Chrome, it's a bad idea. And I am going to now go over and do Merlin because I love Merlin and it's pretty cool. So in the how-to, it tells us to run Merlin. We need to go to cd/opt Merlin, and then we run with sudo Merlin server -URL HTTP. This is the one that does HTTP2, by the way. The URL is 10.0.0.115. We're going to do over port 443 to blend in. And you give it a pre-shared key. I'm just going to do test because why not? What I do? Oh, sorry. I'm not reading my own instructions correctly. I actually don't need to do this. When you run the server, you don't give it the -URL. You give it the -I and then the IP and then the pre-shared key. All right, there we go. So Merlin is running, started the listener, cool. Then we go over to Windows. We do have to run and download the Merlin client. I'm gonna close this and create a new one just so it's clean. And I know I'm running out of time. So there we go, IP.address, there we go. All right, so I have my filter running. I already downloaded the Merlin agent, and to execute Merlin, it's very simple. You do Merlin agent, and in this case, now you do the -URL, HTTPS, go to 10.0.0.115 on port 443, and with the pre-shared key I used, I think was test, hit enter, it's gonna run. We can see that it's running over here through command.exe. Is it? Did it not run? Merlin agent. Well, only one way to find out. Let's go over here. Yes, it did. Merlin says it's there. So I could do interact with my agent ID, which starts with a 6, and you hit tab because everything should be alt tabbable in this world. And then you can do help and see something like shell or shell IP config, and it's creating the job. Next time Merlin checks in, which I think default is 30 seconds, I will get that back. So while we wait for that, we could come over here and look at Wireshark and take a look at the traffic. It is all TLS encrypted because HTTP2 uses TLS by default, and you can see how often it checks in. Once it checks in, there it goes. By default, it's every 30 seconds. If you want to change that, you can change it by doing set sleep to 10 seconds. You can set jitter, it's called Sku on Merlin, to 50%. And then you can actually see the difference in time right here from it checking in way faster than normal. So that is Merlin and Sliver in a very hot minute. So now I am going to look at questions because we only have 6 minutes for that. I did want to say that please do your evals. I see Carol sending things there. If you want to see some of these others, I will be recording videos. Let me know if you're actually watching the videos because they take time to record. So I would like to do a number of these other videos to show the capabilities that these have. And I really, really need more people to contribute. So if you have time, we are looking for people that know how to detect these C2s. I'm working with Lee. He works at RSA, I believe, and has these awesome write-ups of how to detect some of these with NetWitness. But I know not everyone has NetWitness because it's extremely expensive. So how to detect this with Snort, how to detect this with Suricata, how to detect this with NetFlow data, things like that. The folks over at Black Hills are doing some of that stuff, and it's pretty cool. So the detection URL, please share. I definitely will. I'm actually going to go ahead and send this again. While I queue up questions here, the last link there shows my next webinar, and it is for a small business in South Florida. And I told them that I was going to beat the record for attendees. So if y'all can help me and register for that, it's going to be hands-on like this one. Probably not only C2, I'll do some C2, but yeah, I definitely want to get a little competitive. So let me go through some of these questions. Lab setup with pfSense. What does your NIC setup look like? 3-leg setup. I think I showed you that, Troy, great question. Let me know if you want me to show it again. I also have the video for that one, and actually we can go ahead and share this screen again. Too many monitors. There we go. So right here, if you go to Eval Lab, there's a video here that has the Eval Lab, and it has it. If you don't want to do all this, you actually can just do a basic lab. That is a VMware host, an attacker VM, and a victim VM. All right. Do we have to set up the lab ourselves, or do you have a link to download the lab VMs? You do have to set up the lab yourself because I can't give you a Microsoft license. But if you go to Microsoft and pull, I think they're giving 180-day trials for Windows. But the Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition, that's free. That's for you to download whenever you want. All you need is a SANS account. If you're on this webinar, you already have a SANS account. So you just click right here where it says download the VMware OVA file, and you'll have the Slingshot. You can actually test some of these on the same system, but going over the network is more fun. All right, who will update the C2 matrix? Will it be the creators of C2 packages or the practitioners? So it is not the developers. So shout out to all the developers, of course. They're the ones that actually create these command and controls. I am not that talented, but would love to learn. So some of them might be hosting some stuff. But no, the C2 matrix is contributors in the field, practitioners that have used this. What I think, originally it was to find a red team, like the next C2 for red teamers. And then as I started speaking and kind of purple teaming really took off, talking to folks in other organizations, it just happened to be that this is useful for everyone, not just red teams. So creating things of how to detect some of these, especially the vanilla stuff, like this stuff, what I showed you here is downloaded completely free from the internet. And if I can run this, then anyone else can run this. You should test this and make sure that you can try to catch it. Great jobs. Please share how to detect URLs. Okay, can you say a little more about how to set skew? Yes, the skew is a percentage. So in this case, skew 5 is actually, that's a great question. Is skew a percentage in sliver? Normally jitter or skew is, am I in sliver? No, I'm in Merlin. All right, best thing to do is go to the Merlin page, which I went to today, and I can actually answer that question. You do a search for skew and see here, skew, jitter. Yeah, it actually doesn't say. Generally, it's a percentage. So if you have like a 10-second sleep time, so that beacons out every 10 seconds, and you skew it for 5 or 50% is what I would think 5 is, or 5 seconds, then it would go from 5 seconds to 15 seconds. Just like a 50% jitter would go on a beacon that's 10 seconds would go from 5 seconds to 15 seconds. At least I think that's, I'm doing math. How can you contribute? Just let us know. There are many C2s that are not tested. You can see that because some of these lines are completely empty. And we don't like these empty lines. So C3 hasn't been done. Actually, C3 hasn't been done. Meterpreter, not Meterpreter, Meterpreter has not been done. Puppy hasn't been done. Quasar hasn't been done. Red Viper hasn't been done. And Void Rat has not been done. So if you want to do this with the environment that's set up that I went through, you can help already. And then how else can you contribute? Well, if you have ways of detecting this, if you have other ideas, one of the things I want to do is actually map all this back to MITRE ATT&CK, so that we can see this, you know, APT19 uses these techniques, what C2 uses those techniques as well. Would also like to do a virtual meetup for OWASP, sweet, hit me up. I know someone developed a new C2 and new C2 to be submitted via instruction on the Yes, DM me is probably the best way. DM on Twitter. So it is C2_matrix. Where are we? Right here. At C2_matrix or George Chiez. Find me there. Connect with me. There's also the feedback form that you can contribute with as well. Sweet. Wow, only 1 minute over. I really want to thank you all for your time. If you have any other questions, reach out to me. Again, feedback form, Twitter. Please sign up for this new webinar because you all can help me beat the record for most people. It's going to be mostly hands-on as well. It's going to cover all the versions of all the things in ethical hacking for vulnerability scanning, all the way through red teaming and purple teaming. There's also Empire and Starkiller webinar, and please, please, please fill out the evals. Thank you all very much. You all have been great. Thank you for interacting with me and writing on here. It was great seeing your questions. Hope everyone has an awesome night, and everyone that's seeing this recorded, peace and love.